everybody know what the overall intentions is, and then at the same time come back and just ask them in terms of what they currently do, and come to what is a way that we could streamline it. Is there a step in those processes that could be used, whether that's a state position or whether an ordinance
There's
position?
some
Commissioner,
I don't think the estimate had in there. The engine
We are
work,
mutual, please.
and the
And so that's what we're gonna, but Hamid was someone that we did not hear from last time. And there were several of you I wanted to hear from Hamid about, about the right of ways and things of that nature. So we think we'll start with him.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Bond.
Commissioner Son, if
Yes, ma'am.
maybe if I share with Commissioner Williams your directive to the presenters as to what you all were looking for today, may give him a little insight as to how the presentations are being centered around. Would that be okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The topic of discussion would be a brief presentation from each department sharing your thoughts on a process improvement plan or plans, focusing on a greater level of efficiency, effectiveness, and coordination as it relates to your respective vacant properties, code enforcement, etc., duties and responsibilities, to include but not limited to ordinances and our state laws. So they're giving their perspective on process improvements on what we currently have.
Okay, and I get that. And I was, when Commissioner Hassan mentioned about bringing Hamid in, who do, he's not in code enforcement. He don't do any of that. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how's that gonna go.
Well, before, the department, some of the commissioners said, and you voiced that when you call one department, they tell you, well, if you call Augusta Cares, well, I don't do that. X department does that. So that's a part of coordinating all of those efforts in a more efficient way. So I think that's what Dr. Malik is presenting his responsibility in all of this. He didn't get to present last week.
Okay, all right.
Just catch up for him.
So Jeff, we're on the floor, we're still in the back.
No, sir, you're all ready to go.
Okay. So good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So once again, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules this morning to come to this update in terms of the code enforcement. And we're trying to look at it comprehensively. Ultimately, there are three goals here. When we get to the end, we hope we've accomplished three things. Number one, we hope that we've streamlined what code enforcement look like. That's the one. The second is hoping that we've addressed blight in a coordinated fashion, meaning that everyone knows what everyone is doing, and hoping that we've put it in a position that way it is centralized in-house to some degree, as much as humanly possible, I would say. And finally, after identifying all those blighted issues and things, identify a redevelopment strategy, because that's one of the major concerns that have been for quite some time. When we do, from a demolition perspective, we end up with now we got a grass that we got to take care for many years to come. And so with that is a three-pronged approach. I'll mention that once again. So this morning, we're only talking about streamlining the code enforcement. The ultimate goal is to address blight in a coordinated fashion and identify a redevelopment strategy. Those are long-term goals. Today, we're going to start with Dr. Hamid. At the last meeting, there were several of the commissioners who wanted to know about Dr. Malik. I think some of the things that they wanted to know about in particular is not necessarily code enforcement, but it has something to do with the garden city looking like a garden versus looking like a dump. And that thing is, we're talking about our right-of-ways, and we're talking about our entry points coming to the county, as well as some people say it's downtown. So with that, I'll let Dr. Malik go ahead on and make a presentation. Doc, we talk about 10 or 15 minutes at best, and some of my colleagues may have some questions. So Dr. Malik, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I'm sorry, do I need to forward those presentations you sent earlier?
Everybody has access to share if they can do
Yes,
so.
yeah, because I was not ready for formal presentation, but I'm ready to present the information. And yeah, if Ms. Warner, if you can share, you have that information. That's more or less I'm gonna be covering. Um,
Mr.
so,
Lewis, can I send it to you and you assist him with them?
Yes, I mean, if you want to send it to me, that's fine.
Okay.
yeah, good morning, everyone. I can get started with the downtown cleanup or beautification plan that was formulated back in late 2018. Commissioner Mary William that time actually brought it up. The trees are not maintained and shrubbery is not maintained. So we worked with administrator at the time. That was a joint effort between recreation and parks, environmental services, and Augusta engineering. And that's one of the sheet I share with Ms. Barner. For that, all three departments actually, and there was central services involved too. So for Augusta engineering, our role was and still we actually performing that role is sweeping and clean all downtown streets, basically the broad street, around that area and the green. Then sweep parking Monday to Friday, and then the quarterly cleaning of parking bay. I know there've been some question about the bay cleaning, but I know the schedule which we agree was quarterly cleaning those bay, then clean sidewalk Monday to Friday. Normally, engineering crew work in the wee hour. I have Charlie Gay, who is over the maintenance with me too, so he can probably give more detail if the question comes up.
Mr. Malik, which document do you want me to share? You have 4 of them.
It's the downtown beautification is captioned that way. It's a 2-page, actually, full page and maybe quarter of a page, second page.
Jeff, does the mayor have a link?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
You got it?
I'm working on it if you want to just continue.
Okay. Yeah, and then also engineering is responsible for tree trimming around that area is on really needed basis. We noticed something for all the landscape and shrubbery and those medians is maintained by the recreation department. Then maintenance of the curb and sidewalk. Those were the key function which Augusta engineering was responsible to do that. There was other like central services, was maintenance of the fountain and color changing, some electrical powers in downtown area, Christmas decoration, that kind of thing. Then environmental services basically was the trash can maintenance, cleaning and emptying that, and the litter collection on as needed basis. A bulk of the work is done by recreation department per that plan, like mowing of the grass in the median, irrigation system maintenance, landscape maintenance, flower beds, all that stuff. So that's kind of nutshell what back in 2018 was developed for downtown area to keep downtown presentable. And we also, Augusta engineering helps during certain parade time like Christmas, MLK Junior Parade, Veteran, St. Patrick Day. We clean before or immediately after. Some of the special events like 4th of July, Hearts and Hearts, Iron Man, all bike runs. So we do clean before and after, and also check some of the roadways if some, potholes or something need to be filled and restored. During Master Week, our schedule is really daily cleaning of the downtown streets. So that is the downtown area.
Doc, let's just hold up right there for downtown for a moment, if you don't mind, because there are any questions. But I know, I want to start with a question to you, Doc. When I look at what you just mentioned about Broad Street and surrounding streets, Broad Street parking bays, the parades, the special events, and the masters cleanup, how long have you been just those cleanup? How long you been doing this? Does it go back to that 2018?
Yeah, I
that
said,
you mentioned?
the schedule was developed late in 2018. So I would say we've been doing since last year, 2019.
So did you hire additional manpower to do this, or why was this given to you? Do you know why?
We have not added any additional manpower, which basically is a combination of on-call contract services we have and our downtown maintenance crew, which is off Broad Street. Uh, so, so that's what we're doing. Our estimated uh, cost was around $69,000 actually,
And what were you doing for the $69,000 now? What were you doing?
to do the clean up the bays and all other stuff I just mentioned, if we choose a
Okay.
on-call contractor, it's like 15,000 per quarter. Some of the work, if we use on-call, then we have some contingency. But we
Okay.
do have a Broad Street maintenance for the crew who comes out Charlie, 3 a.m. They come around 4 a.m. and they are out of the downtown before really businesses start.
Is that
opening
a
up.
contractor?
No, that's our in-house crew, accounting forces.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? I can't see your hand because of the up front.
Yeah, I got one, Ben.
Yes, sir.
The cleanup downtown and code enforcement kind of, I guess, run together. But Malik mentioned something about the environmental services emptying the garbage cans, emptying trash cans or something on Broad Street. Can you go over that again?
Yeah, this is the other sheet we have. Basically, I can read there are 3 bullets under them. Empty the sidewalk trash cans. This is performed every day, usually early in the morning. Second is the customer resident weekly trash services are collected 1 day per week for the customer residents. It's kind of a trash pickup. And the third is a litter collection on as needed basis. Those are the 3 key functions was allocated.
So somebody come from environmental services, Malik, and handle that different from your department. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, and they do that on a daily basis as far as emptying those trash cans that I guess, on our right of ways and stuff on a daily basis.
That's what's supposed to, yes, sir. That's what the plan, our plan, it should be daily basis. Yes.
Okay, all right, Ben. That's good.
Any other of my colleagues got any questions? Doc, what else? You got anything else, Doc, you want to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to, our major corridors, we can call it entryways, is around 145 miles, linear miles or central line miles. So we went proactive schedule starting this year, which is March to October. It does 6 cuts. It used to be 4 cuts in a year, and really we get a lot of calls and all that. So right now it's 6 cuts, and all that is contract services through our on-call. It's March to October, but we do zero in around like master scheduled that way. We may look into, still we get some calls for like Gordon Highway at the state lines or River Watch or John C. Calhoun. So I may look into for next year, maybe cutting funds somewhere else to allocating another $100,000 toward this effort and go once a month instead of 6 cuts to 8 cars, especially some of these more visible entryways. As I said, Gordon Highway from Skyview to South Carolina state line. So that's what we actually implemented this year. So we have actually set schedule and we have detailed schedule from each contractor, which week of the month they're going to be where, So we know exactly which week where the contractor will be. In addition to that, we went actually year-round maintenance this year for our landscape areas like River Watch at I-20 interchange, all that interchange Augusta Engineering maintains, including Costco Alexander Drive median, So that's a year-round maintenance. Same as the John C. Calhoun we're doing. We'll be doing 15th Street around the Augusta University year-round. Then we have a Winter Spring Road. We just completed the construction about a year ago. So that's the entire landscape medium.
Doc, you got Commissioner Mary Williams has a question.
Yes, sir.
Doc, I just need to know what's your biggest problem downtown? What's been affecting you more than anything else? Whether it be the vegetation, the overgrowth, landscaping, is it what particular thing that kind of holding your progress up for downtown? I mean, it's a lot to handle, I know, but you ought to have something, maybe there's nothing, but that holds you back, keeping you from doing the thing that the city needs to do forward. Is there one particular thing?
Yeah, I think, again, really resource is the key word. And the tree is a major factor in downtown. We got a lot of trees, really not all our resource. We have only 3-man crew in-house and it's hard to keep up. So we depend on call or outsourcing a lot of larger trees. And that's tied back to the fund allocations for the tree effort on that. So that's really one of the key things. Other is, we are working hard to build our street sweeping program or the maintenance function of that. We have somewhat challenge to find the skilled operator to operate the equipment. So that's one of the really challenges we have right now, but we're working towards to. Right now we have only we have 3 street sweepers, and out of 3, really 2 are functional. We can add the equipment, but the main thing is really to find the worker, retain them, and same as the tree. We have a challenge to retain the workers. When we train them and they acquire needed skills or have some experience, they move on to work with the private companies because there are a lot of tree work in towns. So those are the few challenges we have. People with downtown.
Get your hand up, Commissioner Benoit.
I do.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Dr. Malik, I know you and I have talked about this before, but one of my biggest concerns are the retention ponds and the right-of-ways. In some parts of the city, the grass have grown so high on the right-of-ways till you can't see the sidewalks. And then the easement between the houses in East Augusta and the houses in Apple Valley, that grass gets 5-6 feet tall, and it creates a rat and snake issues for the people that live in that area. I know that some of my colleagues are concerned about the gateways to leading into Augusta, and I am equally concerned about that. But I am more concerned about the people that live in the inner city who feel like they're being neglected because the grass is allowed to get so high before anything gets done about it.
Yes, sir. Again, it's really it's a matter of resources and reallocation of some. So starting really this year, we're looking into going into proactive program like we did the right of way, but also bring the contract services costs down. So Augusta Engineering been submitting the new proposals. But same token, we want to maintain the local small businesses engage in what we do and all that. So like right away, this year we brought, it's not that much, but then still it's a lot of money, almost $500,000 down compared to what was paid before. And moving right now, our average cost for right of way is around $3,200 linear mile, but my goal is to bring it down to somewhere in 2000 by basically volume work and the quantity based, reduction in the cost, and also maybe number of cycles. Also, it will take some tweaking. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Did you say 1,000 or you said to bring it down 1,000?
Bring it down another $1,000. So bring it around 2,000, something like that,
Have
So
you taken
we already have that.
Right? I was saying, have you taken in consideration what their staff would look like, whether they have to cut employees or not?
No, not the contract services.
Right.
Yeah. So because that's the most efficient way to really get it done through contract services. If we can keep the costs under control, or at least, somehow bring the balance between the need and the cost and the workload.
You may be right. I'm gonna move on, Doc, but it almost seemed like it was about a 3,200. If you bring it down there, you'd almost bring it down. Cutting. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, but that's a 40% cut in 40% reduction in what you're paying for the same distance, unless you're gonna do something different. But you don't have to explain that now. I just want to raise that issue.
Right, yeah, just a quick thing, as I say, is about really guarantee work and volume of the work. On call, when we started, really, there was no guarantee work. So everybody had to cover the risk in their unit price that we will call them and we need that. But if we can say, okay, you got 100 linear mile 6 times a year, then, if I'm a contractor, I will retain my workforce, and my workforce, my workers even will know they have a work for year round. So they may agree that the lesser pay, all that, at least, So that's the
got some work. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Dennis, you want to say something?
No, I was agreeing with Dr. Malik.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Commissioner John Clark has a question.
Oh yeah. So my colleagues, I can't see everybody because we got so many people on the screen. So if you need to say something, just I ain't gonna say a holler out. Just let it be known. Commissioner Clark.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Malik, I just got one question. Approximately how many employees work in the engineering department?
We have 163 on that number total. But we have around, I would say, around 130 something field position.
You have 130 what?
Filled positions. The rest still there, they're not filled.
130 empty positions.
No, around 30 to 35 empty vacant.
Oh, 30 to 35 empty positions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you have 163 filled?
No, the total.
total? Okay,
Top
so
of my
you
head,
got,
I don't have number in front of me, but yes.
okay, so you have about 130 now. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Hassan. That was all I have.
Thank you. Doc, I have one question, then we're gonna move on to go to the next person, if you don't mind. Our medians, Doc, like coming down Peach Orchard Road and what have you, I know that's a state road. Is there any kind of relation we can form with the state that they can do something more regular around those roads, or either give us some type of enhancement to try to do it ourselves with your contractors or what have you? What's the status of that potentially?
They have their own contractor, a 5-year contract, and they are paying right now somewhere $1,000 to $1,400 linear mile. And really because of the long-term contract and the number of miles contract has to do. So again, is a volume-based really price down. If we have to take over the road like we have John C. Calhoun or River Watch, and we have several discussion, not only with the local level, but at the GDOT commissioner in Atlanta level. GDOT is so far not willing to pay more than what they pay to their contractors. So we do get around 40,000 or 48,000 a year from GDOT for some of the maintenance. I don't think that money come back to Augusta Engineering. I think it goes to John Fund. But we have very good working relation. And Charlie Gay with our maintenance is ex-GDOT employee, and he really has a good relations. Whenever need arise, we call them, and so far they accommodate our request. Recently we did the Peach Orchard Road, but we can have that conversation during our quarterly meeting we have. One is coming very soon on that, but they are open to giving those roads to local, but they're not open to give us or reimburse the cost, but we are gonna have. So we're gonna end up paying, roughly 2,000 more per mile than they pay. I don't know. Let me ask Charlie, how many cuts they do in a year? 4. Yeah, so they do 4 cuts a year. So.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Doc. Anybody else? We're going to move on and go to the next presenter. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Bernard.
Dr. Malik, you said that the monies that we get from the state for the cuts does not go to engineering, it goes to general fund?
That's my reading of some of the numbers budget allocated to us.
Okay.
That's correct.
That's it, Commissioner?
That's it.
Thank you, Doc. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is going to be back to planning and zoning. Mr. Sherman. Doc, appreciate you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sherman.
At the meeting the other day, we talked about 4 codes that code enforcement enforces: our nuisance code, our international property maintenance code, the zoning ordinance, and then the state nuisance abatement. As far as the efficiencies go, how to improve the processes, we've looked at the administrative section of the International Property Maintenance Code, which was adopted, I guess, a couple of years ago, and we saw some a couple of opportunities to improve the process. And one is to reduce the time someone has to come into compliance. As it is, there's a 21-day period for them to comply, and it's basically stated like that. So on day 20, they could go and get a permit if the violation involves having to get a building permit, and then they have 6 months to get started. So it's open-ended, and we've had situations where we end up going to court. They tell the judge, but I have purchased the permit, but they haven't done any work. So what the proposal is on that is to reduce the timeline to compliance within 45 days. Now, that's ideally what we would like, but in some of the older inner city neighborhoods, it boils down to do the owners have the funds to make those improvements? And there will be times where code enforcement will have to work with them to get them through the process. But anyway, we would amend, and the proposals that I'm talking about are in a draft ordinance that's been sent over to the law department for review. So the first one would be to reduce the time frame for coming into compliance. The other will be how the notice of violation is served on the property owner. As it is, we have to send certified mail. There's a delay in when we get what we call the green card back, saying that the property owner has received notice. And they're, the property owner, if they get a notice in the mail that you've got registered mail to pick up, they may or may not go pick it up. If they go, they see who it's from, they say that, well, I'm not going to pick it up. So what we're proposing is to send the notice to the property owner, just regular mail, but also to tag the property, post the notice on the property. At the end of, 10 days, then we can go ahead with then looking for the property owner. If they haven't made any contact with code enforcement, we will look for the property owner and issue a citation and go ahead and take them directly to court. And then the other thing was to the appeals process for someone who receives a notice of violation. As it is, they have 20 days to appeal it. And what they're appealing is the interpretation of the code. It's rare that occurs, but we're reducing that to 5 days, and that's 5 days to register your appeal, and it goes to the Construction Advisory Board. In the past few years, we've had only just a handful to go that are appealed, but that will shorten that timeline. Yeah, and so then the other is the proposed amendment is for property owners who have multiple properties. There will be a
mute the phone, please. Mute it.
There would be repeat and chronic offenders. So if a property owner has several properties, and during a 365 day period, if they have more than 3 violations at any of their properties, there will be a fine of $250. If they get up to 6 violations, then it goes up to $500. And each time after, it can be $500, or they can be, once the violation is picked up, they can be cited and taken directly to magistrate court for a code violation. So it's just to reduce the timelines that we have for getting people into compliance.
Let me ask you something, Mr. Sherman. Let me ask you something, please. I want to go back to where you was talking about how to serve notice of the violation.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage? I think, because I do think that certified mail is important. What percentage of the ones that you serve you think are ignoring it if it's not coming to their household? What percentage would that be?
Well, Commissioner, we get a lot of return mail. I can't give you a percentage unless I went back to look at how many return mails that we are receiving, but the percentage would be high that we get return mail. So what we wanted to do is to have the ability to post one at the house. It's similar to tacking mail. Post one at the house and also send one out certified mail. And like you said, we need that certified mail because, yeah, it would be regular mail. I'm sorry. We'll do post one at the house and then do regular mail. That way the time frame can go ahead and start. What we're doing now is once we send it out certified mail, the time doesn't start unless that person A signs for the notice, or B, it's returned back to our office, and then the inspector has to go out and then post one. That's when that 21-day, that 30-day time frame starts. So we want to change it so we can lessen that time frame.
Okay. I mean, I understood why. I'm just trying to figure out the what legal evidence we'd have that that person had been served. That was my concern.
The legal evidence at this point would be us posting it on the violation address.
Okay.
If they don't sign for it, then we don't have proof that they even received it, and that's what we need when we go to court.
Okay.
And again, just another comment on that. We will have the situations in court where they said, well, I wasn't aware, but we think it's, again, just another tool in the toolbox to help us address the issues.
Before I move on, I have one more question, Commissioner, before I will get to you. Talk to me about for a minute, and when a lot of them go to courts, I know from historical perspective, sometimes, you know, it seems like they get a stay on the execution for quite some time. What do you, if you know, is that 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5 that just gets a chance to keep getting prolonged by the courts? Would you have no control over? I'm just saying we probably need to get the courts in this conversation. That's why I mentioned.
Yeah, yes, sir. Most of the time when we go to court, the first time the judge will grant a continuance.
You know, what timeline? What kind of time would that be?
30 days. Usually it's another 30 days.
Okay.
To get it back on the docket.
Okay. So what is the track record of those persons doing what they need to do in 30 days? Is the track record good for that? Is the poor record?
Yeah, I would say most of the time they do. Once the judge gives them the 30 days, most of the time they come back in and they're in compliance. And then we assess a $50 reinspection fee as well that's paid to our department.
Okay. Okay. All right, Commissioner Williams, Marion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Rob, I need to hear from y'all now. You're talking about a violation and you send a letter out for violation in a shortened period. I think is going to help us. No, there's no question about that. But what's the difference between a violation you're talking about and a boarded up property that's been boarded up for 20 years? So how do we get our hands around the blighted stuff, the nuisance type stuff that's been there?
Right.
I agree with you to send a letter. I agree with you to post the property, because we allow people to let it sit there. And that's what's happening. People are acquiring property. That bothers me even more. There ought to be a stipulation when you just acquire property and you still let it sit there for another 20 years, I say, or for a longer period of time, then you add to the nuisance. So is that for boarded up property as well? You're talking about the extension?
Well, boarded up properties, that's sort of, I don't know, maybe a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, if it's boarded up, it is, you know, a blight. It is something you don't want to look at, but it is secure. It's keeping people from going into it. If it becomes open, then it just moves on to being dilapidated, and process it through the public officer hearing, and then we have another property ready for demolition. I think on the ones that are boarded up, we could probably go back and re-inspect them and move them on into the process of going through public officer. And you know, I don't want to bring it up, but I got to bring it up. The only way to get rid of the blighting conditions, and we have roughly 320 that we have the orders on. We have 161 that are in the process of getting orders. So roughly 481 properties that are, for the most part, in districts 1 and 2. And we don't have the funding to tear them down. If all of those 481 properties were gone, the neighborhoods would look better. We'll have grass issues to take care of, but we won't have the structures there. And as long as the houses are standing, then, you know, you imagine that the ones who live there that are trying to take care of the houses, they may be losing interest in taking care of the properties because of their surrounding environment. But we realize that the funding is limited. And when we talk about funding, the funding is also limited for some of the property owners who we're trying to get into compliance. That's why it's just a process that we have to go through. But to answer your question about the boarded up structures, probably most of them could be moved on into the public officer process of getting an order for demolition.
But Rob,
Mhm.
but Rob, these properties are owned by somebody. Now, when I hear we got 400 properties, it's like they just 400 properties need to be torn down. But there's somebody who have paid or should be paying taxes on them, and we allow them to to sit there and to do that. So if that's the case, if somebody owns those properties, it should not be on the back of the city to go and tear down their property for them that we're not going to get the money for if they hadn't fixed it up. We got to look at what other cities are doing to, whether it be a nuisance law or something got to come in place where we hold people accountable.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't put it on the back of code enforcement or the marshals or the landfill. Somebody own those properties. And if they own those properties, what can we do to let them know we're not going to tolerate you? If I park my automobile on Broad Street and left it, you're going to move that thing. And I'm going to have to pay something because there's something attached to it that says it's mine.
Right. Well, that's the same way, essentially with the property. Is that, you know, what the city will do is tell you to fix it, get it in compliance with the codes, and if you don't, then the city is going to move to have it torn down. And all of the properties that we have the demolition orders on technically belong to someone.
Okay, Rob, I'm with that. My question is, if you can say you're going to tear it down, why the city can't say, or why we can't put something together that says that since we're not going to tear it down, I'm going to sell that piece of property to somebody else legally through the courts, take it out of somebody's hand who's going to do something with it,
Right.
versus letting you keep it there for 20 years and you don't do nothing with it.
Well,
now,
we can do that through the land bank if they're delinquent taxes. But that's the only way, because we can't sell it because we don't own it, we the city. But with the land bank, if they have delinquent taxes, and if there's a third party that wants it, he can go through the process of foreclosing on the delinquent taxes and make it available to that third party. But it's finding somebody that wants it at this time. But the cost of the demolition and the back taxes say that far exceeds the value of most of the lots that what we're talking about, where the value may be $2,000, and with the delinquent taxes and the demolition, $7,500. If you own that property and the value of the land is $2,000, it's unlikely you're going to spend $7,500 to go tear down the house when you'll just be completely upside down with the property then. So what happens is the property owners, they walk away from it. It's just not worth it to them to do anything. And the only thing we can do, the only thing we can do is take them to court, and the judge issues an order and he says, you tear it down, you bring this property into compliance, and if you don't, the city will. Well, the owner's they generally don't do it because it's the values, the numbers don't work out for them. If the property had value, then and we had a responsible property owner, then of course we could get them to do it. But Generally speaking, the properties that have the dilapidated structures, it's just not, the numbers don't work out where the property owner, if they had the means to do it, are willing to go upside down on the property.
Anything else, Commissioner Williams?
Yeah, I got a lot more, but I don't think we're gonna get it answered today.
Commissioner Pratt, you there? I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Rob about what's his biggest challenge besides boarded up property, but what's his biggest challenge that he see in code enforcement that they need? And then I know it's gonna be money, but I want to know what's on their radar as to be able to help them do their job better.
I think priority right now is safety, and we're addressing that. And that is number one. So on that, we have ordered vests. And then to let you know, we had budgeted for, we found the funds in our budget to purchase the vest. The DA's office is coming forward and offering to pay that invoice once we receive it. And they're paying using funds from confiscated funds from drug cases. So they will be purchasing the vest for us. We're moving back to radios and then training. And then I have spoken with the marshal's office, and we're speaking with the sheriff's office just to make sure that we have deputies available that can assist us when we feel that it's a threatening situation. That's number one, is to make their environment as safe as we can. The second thing is the funding. I mean, we've got all these houses out there that, the inspectors work the neighborhoods and they go through this long process of getting an order for demolition, and then the house stands. Nothing gets addressed. And not being critical, it's just that, with the constraint on the funding, that's what that is. Going through the court process for just when we issue the citations and the judge gives an extension, when you hear probably most of the cases in court, there's a reason why they haven't gotten it completed. They've probably started working on it, and they're, in cases they're doing the best they can to get it into compliance. But we have the situations on the other side where the owners have the means to do it. And Terrence them had some owners in court, and they were fine. The judge got their attention.
Well, let me add two things. When you first started with a badge years ago, Robin, and I was totally against that. I thought if the sheriff department, the marshal department with a badge couldn't implement it, I thought that was wrong. We're living in a time where people are doing all kind of crazy stuff, whether you got a vest or whatever you got. It's a crazy world out there. I get all that. But when we let the properties or a property get overgrown, we get the surrounding areas dilapidated, that gives the incentive to continue that. But if it's bad enough having a bad structure, but when everything around the structure, from junk cars in the yard, the trash on the street, the trash that had the laying on the ground from mattresses and all that kind of stuff, that breeds more of the same. So it's bad enough to have these properties, and I understand about the safety side. But if you had an officer on every corner, you wouldn't have too many. But it's just a crazy time there. So I appreciate the safety, and I think that what you ought to do, everything you can do to prevent something, you ought to be tried. But when we allow that kind of stuff to continue, it makes you feel for even going in a situation like that. There's some areas that as a man, I don't feel safe, and I don't worry about going anywhere in the city. But there are some places that I don't feel safe to go in because we have as a city let it go. We ride by it as if I don't have to live on that street or I don't have to go down that street. So Nancy got in a terrible situation in a number of places in our city. So safety is one thing, money is something else, but I appreciate your effort, Rob.
But remember, I think you were on the commission, this has been, I don't know, 15, almost 20 years ago when garbage service started. The thought with that was that if we put a garbage container on every property, then there would be no reason to litter or to have garbage in your yard or have mattresses laying around or refrigerators. And I'm sure it's helped, but it's, and we talked before, do we need to educate the public on what the garbage can is for? But the overgrown vegetation, back during the city and the county days, I think the city just had a crew that would go down the street and cut the grass if it was overgrown. But today, the laws require us to give notice before they can be taxed at the end of the year. So, we're open and we understand the reason for this meeting and whatever we can do to make it better.
Mr. Sherman, I have a final question, if you don't mind. I thought Commissioner Franklin was there. I thought he had a question. In terms of these, I think the violations that was turned back over to you in March of this year, what kind of tickets were those? I call them, I won't say tickets for lack of a better term. What were they?
Well, so when someone violates the code and they don't come into compliance, we issue a citation to take them to magistrate court. These are misdemeanors. So that's what that's about. If we go to a property and the owner's there and we can issue the citation, we do. If we can't find the owner, then it's a matter of when we come up.
Okay, let me ask you this. Were you issuing those citations prior to this year? What were you issuing? Or were you issuing those?
No, the citation is a summons to go to court.
And who was issuing that?
The marshal's office was issuing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Okay. All righty. Anybody else question for them? We'll move on to the marshals next. Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
Okay.
Marshal Lampkin, how you doing today, sir?
Pretty good. How you doing today, sir?
All right, sir. Based on our conversation today, what are some of the things that you think that you all can do that could be more effective in terms of your processes that you got in place?
Well, we already started our CNAP program is really just getting all the parties in place. We already went down to Marion Homes and we had code enforcement, environmental services, the sheriff's office, just getting everybody together and having that communication and getting the properties taken care of. Other than that, I mean, we're willing to do whatever we have to, but streamline our service, that's what I see what we've been doing to help kind of streamline things.
Okay, well, the CNAP program is I understand, that's a specialized something there that you got going there, but we're talking on a day-to-day activity. But I will say, Marsha, and no disrespect, these summons and these citations here, you got to consider taking that back on because that's a part of the safe aspect of it. So we'll talk about that later, but that's gonna be important for us. Probably y'all take that back on, those citations.
Commissioner, I know we were talking about being efficient too, and that's one thing that would help be efficient. If they out there already with the violator or with the person that's not doing the property, I mean, it just makes sense for them to go ahead and write the ticket right there instead of, when they come back and then we got to try and track them down. It may be 2 or 3 weeks, before we can write the ticket to them, have to track them down. That's if they have the personnel with them. Now, if they don't have the personnel with them, then I understand about us doing it. But if they got the personnel already, we're talking about being efficient. I think it'd be better if they go ahead and just write the citation.
You know, we're going to look at that because that may be, because whatever you experience to do it, they experience the same thing. And it was based on where it was set up, it was more of your responsibility than theirs. So you may have to end up considering taking that back on. But we'll have to sit down and across the table from all the parties and see what to make all this work. Because ultimately what we want to do is not duplicate services, make the overall process works well and work in a productive and a fluent manner, well, in a manner that is productive and everybody's benefiting from it and know where to go at the end of the day. Commissioner Marion Williams. You muted, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I wanted to just talk with the marshal about the addition of manpower and additional funds that we put in there to help code enforcement to alleviate some of this blighted and disarray stuff that we got all over the city. Can he tell me, can he share with us what that effort has been and how's that working as far as the additional manpower that we approve to help code enforcement do what they're doing?
Yes, sir, I can. Y'all approved it and it went into effect in April, but everybody know we had COVID happen in April, so we actually just starting to get to hire those people in those positions. So we ain't haven't even filled those positions yet, but we do have once we do hire them, to have a proactive team to be able to tackle more violations, to have a more proactive approach to dealing with code enforcement issues.
So y'all didn't hire because of COVID? I mean, I'm not understanding. If
well,
you
we had,
go ahead.
Well, at one point HR was shut down, so we couldn't do any hiring, and then getting people past the background check and just trying to find the right people for the job. So we hired maybe one person for the 5 that y'all gave us, and that's it.
Well, I'm a little bit disappointed. I've seen some new people on the gate, on the doorway coming in. You know, some new hires in that manner. In fact, I spoke with several of them. They wasn't, I guess, sworn law enforcement officer. They was security type people, I suppose. But I seen some additional people. Now, were those people hired with that same funds, or were those additional people that you already had lined up?
No, sir, that had nothing to do with that. We got a different budget for operations and with security. And with those security, those are part-timers, so it's easy to hire the part-timers than it is to get people through the full background check for law enforcement duties.
Okay, well, we got a serious issue here with the blighted community, and that's why the commission decided to I guess give more effort in your department to help with this thing. This thing is really getting out of control, and it's already gotten out of control, in my opinion, with the blighted stuff and the overgrown properties and the people that's just doing stuff from dumping tires to dumping appliances around our city. We're supposed to be the garden city. And I said, we can't do nothing else. We'll be at least clean up. And I just don't see the city getting clean. We allow, I see more abandoned vehicles than you ever thought about. Just riding through the neighborhoods. I mean, it's easy to see. When your officers go out, do they go out on assignment? And I've never been in the law enforcement field, but I'm assuming, like being her son, I'm assuming that officers do certain things, whether they do it or not. When a patrol officer's on the road, I'm thinking if he see any violation, whether it's somebody speeding, somebody littering, somebody doing something they shouldn't be doing, that he pulls over, or he turns around and address that. Well, if that's not the way the marshal officer work, I apologize. But I'm thinking when your marshals is out, even code enforcement, not just your marshal, when code enforcement see something and it's a violation, it shouldn't have to be called. I really get tired. I get tired of calling the marshal's office or calling the clerk's office, reporting stuff that I ride around every day and I see, and that we got workers who are getting paid a lot more than I get paid, Marshall, but they getting paid and they ride by stuff as if it's not there. We could clean our city up. But when people don't report that stuff, and then people will say, well, ain't nobody gonna say nothing, they'll continue to do that. That's like with the nuisance properties. If we let the property continue to be nuisance there, if enough people complain, they're gonna stop that, because the neighbors ain't gonna tolerate it. They gonna have to live somewhere. But if you can live in filth or in a junky area, then nobody's gonna say nothing. That's gonna continue. So I thought when we gave that extra fund, we gave those incentives to go and to help code enforcement, that would change, because we have more eyes on the road, more boots on the ground, more people doing similar work that prevented it, but it hadn't got to that point. And if you remember when I talked about Perry Avenue, I'm still embarrassed about Perry Avenue. How the stint, and that I went through that this weekend. There's still some stuff sitting out there. There's some I guess some older people who don't have the funds. There's a truck sitting out there, the trash junk in the front yard. People are living on the edge, I'll say, and on the edge meaning in really tight budget. But you can't live like that. You got to, if you own it, it's your responsibility to do something with it. I don't care how old or how young you are. If it's yours, you got to do something with it or get rid of it. And I think that's what our city do. We let people do stuff in our county that other counties don't tolerate. And I guess that's on the commission to get strong enough to do that and to force that. But we would never change it the way it is now.
Anybody else got any questions for the marshal? Ms. Marshall, can you remind us for those additional officers, what when you bring them on, when you get it fully staffed? I think it's a total of 7, right? It was 5, then 2 for something else.
No, so it was a total of 5.
It was a total of 5. So what were the 5 going to do?
We had 3.5 doing enforcement, then we had the 2 with evictions.
3.5. When you say doing enforcement, what did that entail?
4 is working, going out, being proactive, looking for violations, dealing with complaints, dealing with all the people calling in complaining, because we get a lot of complaints from 311, and we deal with a lot of areas that way, just like Commissioner Williams call stuff in, other people call stuff in. We do a lot of that for us with illegal dumping. We handle a lot of those, going to dump sites, trying to comb through those dump sites, trying to find some information so we can actually make a case, and that's why I was able to make some of the felony cases by dealing with some of that. So that's what those positions will be doing.
Okay, all right. Just want to know, because what we're trying to do moving forward is trying not to duplicate these services and look around. So what we can when we streamline this process, it'll be a process when if you go to another department or agency, then you can expect something different. It's not a duplication of services at the end of the day. Anybody else? I'm gonna go back. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marshall.
I was gonna say it's just more of a force multiplier with the divisions we're gonna have. We're gonna be able to just do more of the proactive patrolling for us with the blight and with the illegal dumping and stuff like that.
Okay. Commissioner Marion Williams again.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I need to know how many marshals do we have on the road, not in the office necessarily, but in uniform out. How many officers?
We have 20 total, but they're in different duties. We have some serving papers, and we only had 5 that's actually doing enforcement for the whole county until we got the new officers.
Okay, and I asked this question before. I asked the question before. Your officers serve in Columbia County?
No, sir, that's not the number we do serve in Columbia County. If it's something that's more efficient that we can go to Columbia County and serve paper instead of calling Columbia County and taking a longer period to do, we will, but that's not our normal duty. We may do that maybe once a month, if that.
Okay, you got 20 officers total, and they got, I know you got people at the airport, but you got security people here in building in downtown. And then you got people at the John Ruffin building, and you got people at the airport. But none of those do anything else but just work on the doors and stuff, right?
No, sir. We take security very seriously. So once they're assigned to the building, they don't do any outside work. So the people here in this building, the AJC, they're there, and the airport. They don't do any of the road patrol.
Okay,
don't even have a
okay. I guess I'm trying to figure out how many people do road patrol. That'd be an easy question to answer. How many people doing road patrol out of the 20?
20.
20 of them on road patrol?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But the 5 new people you got, you say 3 of them are gonna be doing what? What you tell Commissioner Hassan?
Enforcement.
Okay, but these other 20 don't do enforcing too?
No, so that's not their primary function. That we have to do with serving papers, garnishment, civil processes, evictions. So we got all those other different functions that we deal with. So that's why sometimes we may have an officer, they may pass something, but they're on their way to eviction. We serve about 16 evictions a day. So it's on a time schedule. They got to get there. They've got people waiting on them. So that's why sometimes they can't address those issues if they're dealing with an eviction. They got to go to on the time schedule.
Well, now that's something we might be able to look at, because when you talk about evictions, and you talking about eviction ought to be scheduled. Y'all not just say, well, here you go, eviction, go do it. That's got to be scheduled with the property owner and everything else. That'll be a certain time. And I'm not in the marshal's office. I don't know how that works, but I think that could be tailored down a little bit to use their manpower a little bit better. When you're talking about serving papers, that could be streamlined as well. When you're talking about serving papers, it's not like you got to serve a paper in the next 10 minutes. I mean, if it came from the courts, it'd probably been in the courts for some period of time. I won't quote no time, but some period of time. But I think you might want to look at other cities and how they do it. I mean, with the Marshal Department, and we just give you 5 more people, which makes it 25, I believe. Is that right? Or that just makes it 20?
20. It'll be 25 then.
It will be 25 then. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, evictions are scheduled on a time basis, so we have to work out with the landowner, with the property owner, and they're all on a scheduled basis. And with all the papers that we serve in paper, that's a civil process, and we, obligated to get those out as soon as we can. Yes, you got garnishment, you got all those different processes we serve. So those papers try and get out as soon as we can.
The blight in this city got to be more important than serving papers. I'm not saying that serving papers not important, but you don't need a uniform and an officer and a car and a badge and a gun to serve just serve the papers. I mean, that'll be several uses for those services for just serving paper. Now, and you've been in the city. I've been in the city all my life. I understand people going up and down. But as you go on serving papers, if it was an emergency call, you might not be able to stop. But you had to be there by 3 o'clock or 3:30. If there's some situation that you ran across that you see, even if you came back to that area, if you wrote that down and came back to that area when you serve that paper, if you serve, you say 16 a week, you say some of that.
16 a day.
Evictions a day per day.
Okay, 16 a day. See, if you sell 20 a day, now I'm talking about a day, 8 hours. Now, come on now. Let's be real. Let's talk. Real talk.
That's evictions. They tell them to take about an hour to do each eviction. So it's not like going to paper, several paper, drop it off. We're talking about evictions. And some evictions take longer than that because we have a full set out.
Okay. And when you're setting out, that may probably not ideal. When it's setting out and the stuff that's being set on the street, which is going to cause more nuisance to the city, how did that coordinate with the landfill and other places? I remember when Rob Sherman wanted to take stuff to the landfill and dump it out there when they had an eviction. I was opposed to that because I say if a man getting set out in his yard, he can't and don't move it. How you gonna go to landfill and move it? So what happened when you have an eviction? How did that work?
So that was one of the positions that we have. We go back. So everything is set out on the side of the road that day. The person who get the stuff out, they have until the next day to have to get rid of it. If they don't, then it falls on the property owner. And that's why we have a follow-up person to go back to every eviction we do and make sure that the landowner get rid of that stuff that's on the side of that road. Because we realized that there was a problem when we do evictions, then you have the trashy stuff down the road and it's more creating more of an issue. So that's one of the positions that they go around and check every eviction we do. They go back the next day and check and make sure that property is cleaned up.
All right, okay. Anybody have a question for the marshal before we let the marshal go?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Lampkins, how does when a person gets evicted, I mean, usually that goes to the court?
Yes, sir. It's a court order that we get. So any eviction we do, it has to come from the court. It's a writ that the judge signs.
Okay, but prior to you getting notification, what has taken place up until that point?
Well, you have the landlord and tenant working together trying to solve the problem. The tenant that don't pay, so the landlord will come file in the court. The tenant gets 10 days to answer. They do answer, they get to go to court. Then the judge decides, if the eviction is valid. If he signs valid, he signs a writ, and then the writ comes to us, and then we go out and execute the eviction.
So when a person gets evicted from property, it's not like they didn't know anything about it or did not have an opportunity to move their belongings.
Yes, sir. They had opportunity. They're notified about it. When we get the writ, we even go tack and let them know that the eviction is going to be served. We don't give them the exact date we're going to do it, but they know they're going to be evicted, so they have time to get the stuff out.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
Anybody else? So we move on. Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you, sir.
The next, we're going to go with the landfill. Mr. Mihal.
Okay.
How you doing, sir?
I am fine, sir.
I think I'm looking at three things you got here. You got overgrown vegetation, you got yard waste and bucket waste, which is probably that's the difference. You got illegal. Are you involved in illegal dumping as well?
Yes.
So let's start.
We just report illegal dumping.
You just report it.
Yeah.
And then we get it up when it's done.
Yeah, and then
We clean it up when it's done.
then we clean it up when it's done. We have really 4 areas that we handle in code enforcement: vacant lots, unoccupied structures, yard waste and bulky waste, and illegal dumping.
Okay.
We also do demolitions, the removal of dilapidated and dangerous structures. We handle that on a reactive basis once they come to us from planning and zoning. So that's the core of our services in code enforcement.
How many persons in each one of those positions that you not the demo side, but when you're talking about vacant lots, how are you involved in vacant lots, and how many people do you have involved with that?
2 and 1 open position currently.
And what do they do with the vacant lots?
They measure the height of the grass, look for litter.
And what do you have a height that they're looking for?
12 inches.
12 inches. Okay.
That's in the ordinance.
And so what you do from there, if you identify a lot that needs to be cut, what do you do from there?
Then we schedule it.
Right,
We send a violation notice first. We have to go through a 10-day process. That's per the city ordinance. And then after that, we schedule it.
Okay.
Correct, for cutting if it's not taken care of within that.
Why don't let Becky do the talking? I mean, I'm getting this. Oh, go on, man.
Go ahead.
How you do, Miss Becky?
Hello.
All righty. Now take me back to the vacant lot again in terms of what happened. Your three persons identified a lot in the 12 inches. Go ahead.
Right. So yes, they do. We have an orange cone. I think somebody had mentioned a resident had seen the orange cone, but we have an orange cone that's approximately 12 inches high, and the code enforcement officer will measure the height. Now, sometimes you have trees or structures where it's very obvious that the height of the grass is overgrown. So not every inspection will have to pull out that orange cone, but the ordinance is 12 inches of vegetation over 12 inches high. And so
Okay.
once they do that, once they take the picture, we have a software, and they will assign a violation that the height is over 12 inches high to one of our office staff members, who will prepare the violation notice, which is sent certified return receipt to the property owner. And we also send it to the actual, well, that's on the if there's a resident living in there. Sometimes we'll do unoccupied homes, and we'll sometimes send notices to an unoccupied structure if there's somebody just moving in. So we try to provide the notice to whoever is there. We'll send it to the address of a property if it's an unoccupied home, and we'll send it to the property owner. So we try to notify everybody involved.
So do you do vacant lots as well as
Unoccupied structures.
Unoccupied structures?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Williams?
Yeah. I want to ask Becky, do you actually have a person that measures the grass 12 inches? I mean,
You know, they'll place the cone down there. Yeah, they will. Sometimes they do, but like I said, if it's obvious, they won't pull out the cone.
okay, so you got somebody to go by and check the facility, whether it be a vacant lot or abandoned structure, and if it's 12 inches, they leave the cone there for somebody else to come along, or do they?
No, they'll place it, take a picture, and remove it. They have it in their vehicle.
Okay, and then from that point, and then it goes to who you say?
We have an office staff member who prepares the notice of violation. They'll send the notice of the violation certified return receipt. And then
okay, and then if there's no property owner like these vacant lots, and I talked to you about several of them, that's overgrown. We got on-call contractors, I think you said, that go and cut these lots when they call.
Yes, sir. We'll wait the 14-day remedy period, and if the property is still out of compliance, it will go on a cut schedule. We'll enter a work order to cut, which is issued to our contractor.
Okay, and let me ask you about if you got a vacant lot that's been in the system for quite some time, and there's no property owner, does it stays in the system, or do you have to get called to go back?
So if there's a work order to cut after the notice of violation, we're going to cut it. But are you referring after that?
Yeah, after that. I mean, do you have to get another call to go back to do that? Or if it's in the system, belong to land bank or belong to whoever it belong to, but it's in the system and been cut. Now, if it belongs, and I may have to retract that, because if it belongs to a land bank or to somebody, but if there's no property owner attached to it, my question is, do we have to get? Do we do it? I've been continually doing it, is keep calling them back in, or is there an automatic system that get somebody to go back and maintain?
Right. No, sir. At this point in time, there is not. We tried to issue a second cut order after the first cut, and then a third cut order after the second cut. It was something that our operations manager was doing. And what happened that year, sir, is that we completely inundated our contractor, and first cuts never were cut because we inundated it with all the second, third cuts that were coming along. I believe it was several years ago, maybe it was 17, 18, we completely overwhelmed our contractor to the point where we couldn't cut all of those lots within that calendar year. So our notices are for a calendar year. And we got to December, and we just weren't able to cut all of the things that had received a notice that year. So we
Okay.
were unable to continue with an automated second cut, third cut.
Okay, with that, answer this. Who inspect the cuts after they've been supposedly been cut? Because sometimes there are some cases that they had not been cut and that they've been charged to say they have.
Right.
And if you don't have a schedule or a way to maintain, how do you know when?
So there is a schedule for cutting, and
Okay.
that is issued by an operations manager. And as the contractor is cutting, they take a before and after picture. So our operations manager can review the pictures, and also they go out and spot check. So that's how they do that. There is from all of the work orders, a schedule is created for that contractor. So we can go back and review what was cut.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Commissioner Fenoy. You muted. Fenoy, you muted. I think you're on the wrong side. Go ahead.
Okay,
You got.
give it now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think one of my concerns is that when the inspectors go out and they see property that's out of compliance, do they report that property, or they don't report it because that's not what the piece of property that they came out there to inspect?
Yes, sir. It is our policy to pick up the neighboring properties, the ones that are on that block or across the street. And after our conversation previously about this, I went to them to ensure that that is what they are doing. They should be, if you have a complaint that's one property and there's an overgrown property right next to it or one down the street, that they should be capturing those. They should be picking up those inspections while they're out. There are other things that they pick up while they're out. Mr. Mihal mentioned if we find an illegal dump, we report that to the marshal's office. If we see an abandoned vehicle, we report those things to the marshal's office. So they're out on their routes. They're attending to complaints, but they're picking up other things. And in addition, we will take different areas, different neighborhoods that we have identified as being, problem areas, blighted areas in the past, and we will send them to sweep the entire neighborhood. So they're not addressing complaints. They're actually out driving through, looking at everything in that particular area. So we do both complaints and we pick up.
Becky, I was most recently somebody did a cut on the corner of 12th and Diagnac Street.
Yep.
And the grass was extremely high.
Yes.
And right next to that corner is 12th and Miller. 12th and Miller is just as bad as 12th and Diagnac.
Right.
But it wasn't cut. Over on Florence Street, there were 3 pieces of property. They cut the property on the left-hand side. They cut the property on the right-hand side, but the property in the middle is high. I mean, it's obviously more than 24 inches, and I see a lot of this taking place.
Right.
And it just makes sense to me that if this piece of property is in as bad or worse shape as the property that was somebody called in about, then that piece of property ought to be addressed.
Right.
And I don't see that happening.
Right. So we are definitely reviewing that with our code enforcement officers. We are addressing that to make sure that they do that in the future. That I'm not quite sure what happened with that, but that is our policy, is to pick up the neighboring properties. But on the back end of that, we also have to make sure that when we are issuing cut orders, that we are making sure that we're getting the ones that were previously already inspected, so that when we send out a vacant lot crew, we're cutting everything that's already been inspected. So yes, sir, one of our takeaways from our meetings last time was that we review with our code enforcement officers to ensure that they are picking up neighboring properties. And then on the back end of that, make sure that our cut crews are cutting everything that's been previously inspected. So we don't have these islands where one thing's being cut, then everything else is knee high. So yes, sir, we are reviewing those processes.
And if anybody ride on 12th Street from Laney Walker to Savannah Road, I mean, about every piece of property with the exception of one or two that's vacant or it's a vacant lot, the grass is I mean, it's obviously need cutting. If you ride on Pickett Avenue from Riceboro Road all the way down to Twig Street, the whole area it needs cutting.
Right.
And for whatever reason, it looks like these pieces of property are being ignored.
Right. I understand. There's a lot out there that need to be cut. Yes, sir. Agreed.
Miss Becker, I have a quick question.
Yes,
When
sir.
when you cut these properties, these vacant lots, are you billing the owners of the property?
Yes, sir, we are. Mm-hmm.
What is your collection rate? I mean, I'm sure that some of these owners have passed or what have you. So what is your success?
Taxes, more or less.
Right, and that would come from the tax commissioner, but we have looked at that in the past, and normally it's pretty good, except in the properties where folks, as Rob had mentioned, they just abandon them. The taxes get more expensive than the actual value of the property, and they just don't pay the taxes. So in those blighted areas, our collection rate is not good.
Okay, and so what are you paying? The average lot that you haven't cut, what are you paying your contractor? The average lot, you got an idea?
I think Lonnie,
It's $200 to cut a lot,
Right.
but it's sectioned in quarter hours.
I'm
Right.
sorry, say that again, please.
it's $200. I'm sorry, it's
$200.
that's what we charge the customer.
That's what you charge your customer. I'm saying, what are you paying your contractor per lot?
$3,200 a week.
Yeah.
32.
The contract gets average about $3,200 a week.
A week?
Yes. Yes.
And what you getting for that? How many lots you getting for that? You're gonna give it to me, David. Send that to us.
You get about 50 cuts per week.
Per crew.
Per crew.
Per crew.
Okay.
I don't see that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. But
it's possible. It's possible.
Okay. Commissioner Mary Williams.
Yeah. Becky mentioned about code enforcement people. What's your code enforcement people doing different from what Rob Sherman code enforcement people doing?
The only thing that we do similarly is we inspect overgrowth. Now, Rob inspects the overgrowth on occupied properties. We inspect overgrowth on vacant lots and unoccupied properties.
Well, let me stop right there. First of all, and it's not in your warehouse, but the commission need to understand overgrown property, whether it's somebody there or not.
Right.
If we're gonna clean it up, we got to stop worrying about who stay there, who don't stay there. That's on the commission side.
Right.
How many inspectors do you have?
We have 2, and there's one open position. So we have a total of 3. But they also do primarily the garbage collection contract compliance. They go out and help our citizens and review garbage cans that are overfilled or yard waste that is too large and oversized. We deal with assisted collections, and just they primarily deal
in
with
the 16 years I've been here, I've been complaining about people going off, doing work and bringing stuff home for our garbage haulers to pick up. And nobody have corrected that yet.
Yes.
And it amazes me how anybody could have the same stack of garbage or similar stacks of garbage every week.
Right.
And I told the haulers, I tell everybody to take pictures every week. I even told the news media to go by and take pictures. It doesn't make sense for us to allow people to dump on our properties the way they're doing it, because they go off and do work and bring it back. So your inspectors, who's supposed to be inspecting that, have they ever brought that case up? Have they ever did any citation on that?
No, sir. What we do is when we find that, we refer that to the marshal's office. We don't, our code enforcement.
Okay, hold your point. If you find that, and I guess you're saying you have found that, is that right? Yes or no?
Yeah, people putting.
Okay. Yeah, yes or no. Okay, if you found that and you report to the marshal's office, what happened with those cases?
That they write citations.
Okay, the marshal said he done stop writing citations, so we ain't writing no citation no more.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out how this is one problem in this conversation just came up now. This ain't to solve all, but if this is something that's been ongoing, and if our garbage hauler says, we say to our garbage hauler, you pick up anything they put out, people bringing stuff in, they bringing rodents in.
Yes, sir. I've done a little bit of research on that because I have heard you mention this. I've heard the commission talk about this. There are ordinances which prohibit that. And I'm looking into that. I'm researching and trying to find an ordinance where you cannot, the materials that are placed out should be generated from that parcel, from that property. They should
exactly.
Not be
and that's not happening. Today is my garbage pickup day. It's Tuesday, and I guarantee you there's people who got stuff out that's been brought in from other jobs. They went off and done, went through it, decided they didn't want it, put it on the track every week. That's just one of the problem with this government. But if your inspector calling the marshal's office, and the marshal's office is calling code enforcement, whoever they're calling, somebody somewhere, we've got to be able to put a hole, put a plug in that hole that's leaking this garbage out.
Right.
And this conversation helped me a lot this morning. Hopefully we can continue to conversate and get this thing worked out. I want to ask one other question about demolition of properties though. And I think Mr. Wimley is sitting there, but Mr. Wimley, can you help me understand how the demolition process works once the court have gave an okay on tearing down these properties? I'm thinking different from anybody else, I guess, but if the older properties have been there and should have been torn down, who makes the decision on what property get torn down when some been there for 10 years and some been there for 3 years?
Well, the decision is based on priority and instruction from code enforcement to expedite. If the house has been there and there's no expedite or any information except the priority, then the house is taken down according to priority.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that because code enforcement says that the landfill make decision on what house to get down. And I said, well, how that work? The landfill is out of the landfill and y'all in code enforcement and they gonna make decision. We've got some old structure that's supposed to have been scheduled to be torn down and they hadn't been torn down because the landfill sends an order, I guess, an order I'm using, to say which house come down. But if those houses that's dilapidated, that's dangerous, there's one on Perry Avenue and 12th Street that's been halfway burnt down and the kudzu done covered the house, you can't even see it, where children and people can access it any time and it's still standing. So we need to prioritize on who's on first and what's on second. But the code enforcement, and I don't want to get y'all into a debate here, but code enforcement have told me there's a house on Davis Street right off of Kitchenbow Road that's open, that you can go in. The code enforcement went inside, took pictures, the mattress on the floor, house been abandoned for 20 years. You can't even see the house for the vegetation in front of it. But I met code enforcement up there, they said, well, the landfill makes their decision. How in the ham did that work?
Okay, Commissioner, that's a true statement on both parties. As I stated, code enforcement will send me information saying expedite a piece of property. Now, you don't have anything, well, let me correct yourself. We have about 5 houses that are in 2017. Everything else we have took down, and we're dealing with 2018. So if the house was out there prior to 2017, we probably have taken that down. If we have the order to proceed, it's pretty much down. So now you're moving in 2018. If you, right now, Commissioner, you tell code enforcement that you want a house down, he's gonna send me a notice to expedite this particular house because you have contacted him and told him that you want that structure down. Now, I may have 50 more expedites on that. We're taking down an average right now, you're gonna have about 75 houses come down this year. But when he put that, when he said that expedite because you made contact with him, then that's added to the rest of the expedite. Now, some of them, when I go out and look at it, I move it forward, but you're dealing with a group, you're dealing with a cluster expedite. So really it falls right back into the priority of where you take them out because you got some expedite or property that just was identified in 2020, but you also got some expedite on property that was identified back in 2018. So which one should go first? So that's a decision that environmental service have to make.
Well, the commission shouldn't be making no decision on expediting anything. There ought to be a standard. If it's a safety issue, safety ought to come first. Now, when we use safety when we want to use it, but if a safety issue where a child or someone can be harmed or there's a endangerment, that ought to take priority. But when you got stuff that's been left for years and years, and then finally somebody else said, well, we can tore down this note here because the commissioner said so. There ought to be a process that the code enforcement, the marshal department, and the landfill have to go by. So until we do that, I mean, anybody can holler, the sky's falling, and just because we say the sky's falling and it hadn't fell yet, I mean, it's still there. So we really need to get some in our toolbox that we can use that's going to be effective, like other cities are doing, and move us forward.
I'm a commissioner from Northern, Commissioner John Clark afterwards. Commissioner Bernard had his hand up first. That I was recognized.
I think the biggest problem is money. Is that we don't have the financial resources to tear down all of the houses that have been condemned for demolition. We don't have enough money to hire enough crews to cut all of the vacant lots that need to be cut. And I think until this commission is really serious about addressing this issue and giving environmental services, code enforcement, and the marshal department the financial resources that they need to do their job, then we're going to continue to have conversations like this. At some point in time, I would like to see code enforcement, environmental services, and the marshals department get together and work up a plan that would address the issues that we have been talking about and bring forth the recommendation to the commission so that we could be serious about addressing this issue.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is for anyone that can answer this, and I won't ask for it to be answered here. I'd rather for it to be explained to all of the commissioners in an email if you will do this, please. But we were sent a list of, I think it was around 377 properties that had demolition initiated. And beside each property, there was a status, whether it was initiated or escalated, in progress on hold, assigned on hold, and what have you. I would like, if you will, to send each of the commissioners an explanation as to what each one of these codes actually means and what the status of it is. The other thing I would like to see, and I'm sure the commissioners would like to see it also, is a complete list of the properties that have been cleared and scheduled for demolition. And, you know, I'm going to say this as a personal note.
Excuse me. Commissioner Dennis Williams, mute yourself. Mute yourself, please.
I have heard Commissioner Marion Williams and Commissioner Bill Fenoy, this has been one of their fundamental desires, is to escalate the demolition of blighted properties. We have a special SPLOST 8 coming up. I think that we need to find some room in there that we can put money in here to take care of this. I think it's way past due, and let's give Augusta what they need, and let's back these commissioners in their efforts to get this done. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Becky. Anything else you all want to say in reference to what you all do? Then we go next. Anything else?
Well, there is something else that we are doing, and we have been looking at for quite some time. One of the big, huge problems in our lot cutting process is the ordinance, and we're bound to follow that law, which requires inspection, a 14-day remedy period before we can go out and cut. And some time ago, there was an ordinance where notice was given as a blanket one-time notice, and it was in the property tax bills. We are kicking that around, present it to the commission to see how they feel about possibly reverting back to that. As Rob had mentioned in his presentation, that with a blanket notice to all property owners, that would streamline and make the cutting a lot more efficient and effective, where you wouldn't have the islands of this one was cut but not that one. If that's not possible to go back to a blanket notice, then we're also considering revising it. It's in legal right now. We have several conversations with the law department. Can we revise it to where we can also do regular mailing and a post on the property? We're looking at different means and methods to providing notice to speed up our lot cutting process.
How many lots do you deal with over the course of a year? On a monthly basis or what have you? You got any idea? I know you mentioned 50 from one person. So how many vendors do you have? And that'll give me an idea.
We have one vendor that has 2 to 3 crews, depending upon the funds that are available. I would say, I think last year we cut, was it 3,000 lots of the total year? Yeah, something around that.
3,000 lots.
Around 3,000 lots for the entire year.
Okay.
And there's over 12,000 lots.
Have you considered giving to multiple vendors and not a single vendor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, man.
Commissioner, can you see my hand?
Oh, I didn't see you, Commissioner. Go ahead. Where are you?
I've been waiting for a minute there.
I didn't see you. You go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I just want to say something reference to demolition. One of the problems that I personally believe that we have with demolition is we keep talking about the funding. I see funding is part of the issue, but when we have unlimited money being spent on these houses to demolish these houses, we need to cap what we will pay for a house and then let contractors bid on that. And it's a very lucrative business for them, because now we've always had this conversation about prisoners that could build buildings and stuff like that, or build correctional facilities. But when we talked about having prisoners do some demolition, we had contractors come out to woodwork, all against that. So obviously there's a lot of money to be made in it. So if we put $50 million into it, we're gonna spend $50 million. So we need to cap how much we will pay for a structure to be demolished, or either cap it by a block or area, and then let contractors bid on that. That is the way we could bring the price down for the demolition. They did that with the sanitary sewer program. They started off with blocks, and then but they constantly reduced the price by the way the bid was done. We don't cap what we will pay for a house, we will continually run out of money. Why are we paying $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 to demolish a shotgun house? And the second part of that, why are we paying these folks enough money to turn around and pay our landfill to put our stuff in our own landfill? I think we need to look at the process we are using for demolition, put an ordinance out there, a resolution to cap what we will do, and then we'll see how much funding we really need. But as long as we just let the funding run to whatever the contractors decide, we ain't gonna never have enough money. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Commissioner, I have my hand up. I want to just clarify something if I could.
Go ahead, sir.
We still issue citations for environmental services.
Okay. All right, thank you. Ms. Becky, anything else?
No, sir, that's all I have.
Hey, Commissioner, can I get a thought from the environmental people about what I said about capping the demolition bid?
That'd be our call, Commissioner, but I agree with you.
Okay, I just want to know if they thought that would help.
Possibly.
It will have some effect, but right now, if you went by structural material to determine the cost of taking down a structure, we on the low end right now.
All right, good. And I will say this to this. If folks are bidding on properties and getting a whole slew of properties, I don't think that really applies. That's why you have a bid process and why you cap. You don't want to go out and say I'll pay you this much for that and then bid on it. Then everybody gonna charge that or more. So for me, as Commissioner Son said, agree with me. We got to look at capping the process. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Becky. Thank you, Mr. Mihal and Mr. Wimley. Thank you all. Mr. Welch, we've got a couple of minutes. We got a few minutes here. I think you wanted to share with us about some of your what you get 213 lots you got going on there.
Yes, sir. I just have a couple of slides. I think that will sort of help.
We don't need the slides. All we needed, Commissioner, Mr. Welcher, was you was telling us that you was going to, because we didn't need a presentation.
Oh, okay.
What we needed really was how were you going to handle your lots, get the lots clean and what have you. Okay.
So where we are with that real quickly, from a parcel care perspective, there are four activities that we do for parcels. What I can tell you is that I'm excited to say that our lawn services start back today. Of those right under 200 parcels, you have 5 small business vendors. Each vendor, there's a 2-year award. The first phase, which has to be done by end of the month, would include a deep cleanup and maintenance of each parcel with monthly maintenance service as well. As Becky indicated, the only way vendors can get paid if they provide before and after pictures as they submit pretty much their invoices as well. So with that, basically what we see, we talked about parcel care of being sure that any property that we take in, because we follow a development plan, any property we take in, at the end of the day, we know there's an end use for it. So we take a property in for the purpose of either affordable housing, workforce housing, or some type of small business development. So you have parcel care where we'll be sure that we're maintaining those parcels from a weed, grass, and shrubbery perspective monthly. Also, we have our inspectors. We have 2 inspectors as well as a project construction specialist that goes out of the properties that we have. There are 25 structures. Of those 25 structures, 11 of those structures are basically unoccupied properties that from month to month, they are boarded up. Some aspects, we have inspectors that go out monthly and they'll look at the properties. So, if they need to be demolished, then we move to get those properties demolished. For example, as of last month or last 30 to 45 days, we've demolished 4 properties, one on Perry, one on Riceburg Road, one on Dulles Lane, and one on Ash Street. And then the third thing we do is we maintain insurance on all the properties that we acquire and keep in the land bank. And then last but not least, we always look for a way, knowing that our end result is revitalization and transforming neighborhoods back into thriving communities. So understanding that if there is a property that we can take and we can restore to bring back on the tax roll, then we look to do that as well, i.e. 1420 Twig Street, which is the Johnson House, as well as there was a dilapidated duplex on Perry Avenue where we're currently building 10 single-family houses. We acquired that property as well, completely gutted it, and we'll provide affordable rental housing there as well.
Hold on, Mr. Welcher. What about the other 14 properties that have structures on them? You mentioned about the 11 that are unoccupied. So what is your goal with those 11 that you got there? Do they need to be demolished? Or are you trying to refurbish them or what have you?
No, sir. Those other 14 are basically rental units.
Oh,
they're currently rental units. If you look at the end of Florence Street where Pine Street is,
okay,
those 3 duplexes there, they're currently they're in the name of the land bank, but they are affordable rental properties. You also have one there on 11th Street, which is a duplex. It stays in the name of the land bank for the purpose. We're not transferring or selling it, but when we, as a part of development, we just develop it into a rental duplex.
And what about the 11 unoccupied? What's the status of those?
So they're currently, eventually, we'll do an assessment once we get to those streets, i.e. like there are 4 on Parks Avenue, but we haven't begun development on Parks Avenue, but they're not to a point where they are just a hindrance to anybody in and around. So they're not just totally open. So we'll make an assessment once we get to those properties, whether we need to demolish those or if we can actually rehab it.
Now, I've seen some addresses on the 1300 block of 10th Street, Mr. Welcher. One of the ones that comes to demolition, our whole, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm just make a point to you here if you don't mind.
Okay.
If our structures are the same thing that Commissioner Williams and others talk about need to be torn down, we can't wait till you get to the street the way to develop. It need to come down and need to come down. So I think that approach, and if you're talking about the 1300 block of 10th Street, and the list I looked at, you own about 3 there, and I can tell you, the ones up in that area, if my memory serves me correct, they look like they need to come down. So I would think you probably need to change your approach to it if that's the case, and not say wait till you get to that area. If they need to come down, they need to come down.
Yes, sir.
Because we're complaining about the citizens at large, then we have a responsibility as well, if that's the case.
Well, and what I will say to that, I don't disagree with you. What I will say is we have a tight adherence to all of our properties. So all of our properties, as I indicated, we're back on track. So we're looking at our properties daily, weekly, and monthly as well. We're definitely in the business of trying to sell properties. So we're definitely not going to be a deterrent to, we're not going to cut our own selves in the foot. So point well taken, sir, and we'll make sure that we adhere to your directive.
Mr. Clark, Commissioner Clark.
Yes, I had a question, and either Mr. Welcher or Ms. Baker can answer this. When a piece of property is in the land bank, whose responsibility is it to have that property cut, and who gets billed for that property being cut?
Is the land, let me, for Mr. Welcher, is the land bank here? Let them speak for themselves if one of them is here. Is the land bank on the line?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Edwards.
To Commissioner Clark's question, so city-held departments or city departments that hold their property are responsible for their own. So HCD would maintain its own, utilities would maintain its own, and then the land bank has approximately 84 properties that we are responsible for. Some coming as city transfers, some coming in as foreclosures, and we typically move those properties in and out. So we stay around that number. Because foreclosures come in as requests from private citizens, and then we sell those properties. So to specifically answer your question, each entity holding property in the land bank would be responsible for its own property.
Okay, so when you, Mr. Evans, when you need a property cut, then the land bank pays who to have it cut?
If it is a land bank property, we pay a private contractor for those cuts.
Okay, thank you very much. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Marion Williams.
Yeah, I want to go back to Mr. Welcher about the rental properties that you talked about. I guess my question, Mr. Welcher, how many rental properties do HCD have? And are we getting in the rental business?
We have less than 30 rental properties across Augusta, Richmond County. No, sir, we are not in the rental business, but it is a part of affordable housing. When persons walk through our door, we want to be sure that we're able to provide them a decent, safe, and sanitary house. Everybody's not ready for home ownership. So if we can provide affordable housing, but to answer your question, we have less than 30 rental units across Augusta, Richmond County.
How much money do the rental unit bring in, Mr. Welcher, and where that money goes?
It can vary. So typically using HUD's income guidelines, it can bring anywhere between $500 and $800. The property, once the money comes in, we take it and put right back into our redevelopment pot for future development, whether that be through new construction, whether that be through rehabilitation, or whether that be through historic restoration. The city is not in the business of making money and or making a profit.
Okay, and that was my point. The city is not in the business to make money and to rent properties. I guess is a good thing, but I look for private developers to do that versus I thought your job, what you were doing was getting developers to come in and develop stuff. I question on some late malls, what I call late mall shotgun houses. You had a conversation about that, about doing it. We looked at Pear Avenue, and I questioned some stuff you had in there. You can look in the front, straight out the back. It's a newer version, but it's still the same thing. We'll be putting people in a better position, whether it be rental or anything else, than what we used to have to deal with years ago. The other thing is that if each entity is taking care of their own properties, you got somebody back on track now doing your cutting. So each entity is responsible for finding their own contractors and working out that agreement with them. The land bank just housing them, is that right?
That's correct. They do house properties that are acquired by ACD, correct?
Okay, well, if their land bank is housing yours, then they're housing anybody else as well as themselves. And I know Sean is there, he can answer whatever question. But I'm just, because it's so much, it get overwhelming. We get confused, or take that back. I get confused as to who's on first and what's on second. When you look at the land bank, I'm thinking the land bank is responsible. I'm thinking the land bank is housing for you or for any other entity. I look at the land bank as having properties. When we allow properties to be boarded up, do you have any boarded up in your possession?
I do. That's part of it.
Okay. That's a simple question. If you got them boarded up, this government needs to look at the length of time where you or any agency got property can leave it boarded up. Because if you go acquire that property and we let it stay boarded up for years, I mean, a long period of time, that's not doing us any good. I know you have said you got to acquire other property in order to do something with it. I get that. And there may be some exception to, because the property is so small, you got to get to maybe to do something with. But we got too much of that stuff we kind of walked away from. We let people go in and board up, and then they forget about it. But I think it's the year's limit. I think it's supposed to be a year's limit. And they're supposed to come back and then get it re-inspected again. That hadn't happened. Once they get it boarded up, nobody cares, so to speak, to kind of leave it out there. So you answered my question about the property that you got. You got some property boarded up. We need to address those issues and see how we can get those properties back on the tax book quicker than later.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Welcher.
Thanks, sir.
I'm gonna go to Mr. Edwards. Ms. Edwards, I think you said you had 84 properties, and you talked to us about those 84 properties, how many of them actually had structures on them, how many just land, and how are you keeping those properties up?
Of that 84, and we'll be adding to that when the next tax sale happens. But of that 84, 71 were vacant lots. We recently had about 60% of those cut, and we'll continue to be able to maintain those. We've tried to focus our resources in areas where development is happening. So we want to make sure that we don't have overgrown lots in the Twig Circle area, the Heritage Pines area, James Brown Boulevard, those areas where we already have city resources being invested. There are some lots that have been acquired in the past through the land bank that are off some of our lanes, and they do deserve attention. But because of their location and limited impact on future sales or investment from private companies, we've had to postpone attacking those in order to be able to prioritize those that are more visible. So 71 are lots and 13 are structures. We have gotten prices for the structures to come down to a point that was made earlier, I believe by Commissioner Sias. The price of demolition is expensive. And the land bank relationship has changed with the city in some ways. There were times where resources were available in order to be able to further assist us in the maintenance of property. But as resources have become more tight, we have had to seek third party and private companies in order to be able to get that done. So we understand we still have work to do on our inventory, and we plan to address that.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, I mean, this is really confusing when the land bank, and I thought was an entity acquiring this property, but how we ever get a handle on this when all these different entities is in the land bank and they in, not competition I want to use, but they got to get their own demolition people, their own grass cutting people. I mean, we would never know what's what because we see a piece of property and say it's in the land bank, but it's owned by a private developer. It's owned by the land bank itself. Sean just mentioned that they'll be adding to it at the next sale. I thought people were bringing property. I didn't know they were buying property to put in the land bank for future sale. I thought, and that's how much I know about real estate. I thought they was holding properties and maintaining them because they're in the land bank. They're really not in the land bank. They're just using the land bank name. HCD still got their own property. They still doing their own thing. I don't know how they even get tired with saying the land bank. And if the land bank is buying property, they ain't in competition with the private developers. The private developer can't come in there, and I don't know where the land bank gets its money from. I don't know from selling property or handling property or what. But how can Joe Q. Citizen bid and do something with it if they're bidding against somebody who already knows what's there, already can see what's going to be on the sale, already got that insight, I say. The other side of that, Sean, is when the land bank sells property to a nonprofit like the churches. I've got some serious issue with the church getting a piece of property and leaving it just like they found it. If they buying this property, they ought not be able to do like nobody else, but using the church saying, well, I'm buying in the name of the church. And we say we do a lot of stuff in the name of the Lord. Now, let's be real about this thing. But if you're going to get this property, you ought to be doing something with it. We cannot allow people to get property and just hold it again. And they say, well, we can't do nothing with it for a year. Then we can't sell it. Don't sell it then. Ain't no sense of putting out of one hand to another hand, then leave it there. If we're going to do something with this property, we need to do something with the property. Make sure that agency is ready to at least clean it up and get it looking presentable. Don't leave it just like it was. That go back to this commission. It go back to us to make sure that when those entities get those properties, they don't just hold it and leave it like it was all the time. I want Sean to respond.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yes, sir. So the land bank under state authority has always had the ability to, it's called a right of return. You can purchase that property back from an irresponsible purchaser minus any fees because they didn't do the project that they planned on doing. So Joe Q Public comes to the land bank and says, I want to foreclose on a tax delinquent piece of property at 123 Main Street. Land bank verifies not only the delinquent taxes through the tax commissioner's office, touches base with environmental services through planning in order to see if there are any demo liens, any grass cutting fees, because we want to try to collect on everything that's owed to the city. But then we move forward with that foreclosure. Well, again, in the past, there was an understanding that Joe Q Public was going to do Project A or whatever that may be. It was not until February of this year, and you've received a copy of our policies, that we formalize what that looks like, that a city department, a nonprofit, a for-profit company has a designated amount of time in order to be able to get that project done. And we began to vet on the front end what that project is and ensure that they have the funding to be able to do so. So when your land bank was established, it operated in good intention that everybody was going to do what they bought a piece of property to do. We've tightened that up since I've joined the organization to say, okay, not only do you need to do what you say you're going to do, you've got this long to do it. And we want to make sure that you not only have the money to do it, but that you have the experience to do it before we ever even take it to the board to ask them to foreclose. So that's new. It is in response to having an inventory that fluctuated with properties that were just kind of sitting, but we're doing a much better job of accountability now.
Okay, Sean, question. When a man or a business comes new and never done it before, if they got the resources, but I mean, you got to start somewhere. And I guess I'm on the opposite side right now because I want people to come in and develop. I don't want to come in and say they're going to develop and don't. I don't want to say they're going to develop and fall. But when you put, if you've never done it before, I mean, that's going to restrict some people. I mean, that's going to stop some people from trying to come in and move forward and investing and building some good stuff. There'll be some standards.
Yes, sir.
And if they don't go by those standards, not that you hadn't done it before, you said if they hadn't had the experience to do it. And I want to clarify, if you don't have the experience, I mean, you gotta get to number one. You can't get to 3, 4, and 5 till you get number one.
Yes, sir. And we spend a tremendous amount of time working with the smaller investor that wants to get into the real estate industry. We mimic HCD's developer requirements, and I spend a lot of my day trying to coach and train individuals through that. We've built banking relationships locally to make sure that folks have access to capital. We refer often to HCD staff in order to be able to get those questions answered. We're sending folks to planning to understand zoning and rezoning and restrictions. So we're trying to coach folks to that point of being able to successfully do real estate. But to your earlier point, and as we tell every customer, we ain't gonna tell you what to do with your money, but we don't want you to fail for 2 reasons. One, I don't want to take the property back, which we have the right to do if you're unsuccessful. But then 2, most small investors can only really fail twice. You might mess up one project and be able to financially rebound, but if you mess up again, a lot of times that bankrupts that opportunity to move forward in real estate and use that to build wealth for you and your family. We don't want to see folks fail because we need that tax base. That person buying is not only paying past due taxes, but they're going to pay future taxes, thus making the property productive, our mission. But as I jokingly tell most of our customers, I not only want to see you buy it and pay the taxes, I want you to develop it, because then we can charge you more taxes. So we want to see success, and we work them toward that. And we make sure we partner with anybody in all our city departments to ensure that they're going to be able to master those steps before they start spending their money, because then they're financially committed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm gonna try something else here. Warden Joseph was next, but really this was a little different along the line of what something along the line of Commissioner Sykes was talking about. So we don't have to hear that today. But here's what my intentions is today at this point. I'm gonna schedule the next meeting possibly about 2 weeks out But here's what I'd like to see. Everybody comes back who's involved with code enforcement. Just the code enforcement part of your organization. Bring back what that budget looks like. In other words, what you have for staff. You don't have to identify staff by name. It's just if you got 9 staff persons, you can say the total budget for the staffing side of it is here. Here's the other side of for implementation or what have you. In other words, my whole goal with that is try to find exactly how much money are we investing overall in code enforcement. That's one part of it. The second part of it is going to be a little bit more, I don't think it'll be problematic for you because it ain't me, myself, right? You got people that can write. Identify exactly what you do in code enforcement. We got these paperwork, these floor charts, they're absolutely good. I'm not asking you to iron everything out. If you say we serve once, let's just say we serve once. If we manage cutting grass, 1 paragraph, 2 at best on anything you do. That's going to be the only way it's going to get us to be able to put something side by side and see what you do and see how we can begin to consolidate some of that body of work. Because I see as we heard today, environmental service does something with lots and grass and what have you. The marshal do something in the very same area. Planning and zoning code enforcement do some very. So we need to kind of see all of that. You don't have to write a story. You don't have to write a book. 1 paragraph on each one of those things, 2 at best.
Mr. Hassan.
Yes, sir.
Are we at the point where we're talking about processes too? Because
no, we got processes already in hand. I don't know whether you have one. They've given us.
Well, with code enforcement, it seems like it just takes a long time to get something done. I just want to eventually get to the point where we talk about the process and taking them to court and what have you. I know they said they go to court once a quarter to get some things done. We may need to start going to court a little bit faster so we can see results. You know, there's several things that I've talked to code enforcement about that, you know, they're working on, but, you know, you just got a process. We may need to create something else that helps get it done faster.
Yeah, so they talked about some of that much earlier, Commissioner, and then there's a floor chart as well, but I agree with you. And that's how we begin to centralize all of it. And then that gives us a better chance of doing all of that moving forward. And so that's going to be our next thing. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, but that's where we're headed and trying to make some sense of all of that.
Yeah, I think we may, I don't know if we can do it or not, may consider creating some type of court, magistrate, something where they can go to without going to the regular folks they go to now so that they can get things done faster. That may be something that we can talk about.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We thank you very much for your time. We're out of here, but in terms of what my request was, please, you can feel free to give me a call for clarity. Thank you all very much for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you, sir.
So you can get call.
Jeff, you can take us down.